Things just took a major turn for the Los Angeles Lakers as we have multiple new reports that have dropped surrounding one player in particular that reveals some huge information surrounding Rob Pelinka's trade plans. We're going to break down exactly what that is and discuss what this means going forward, as well as a few other things on this episode, folks. Before we get into it all, if you're a part of that percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, you guys have been absolute beasts of the support, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again. Now, folks, obviously, a lot of talks happened earlier on in the offseason, the trade deadline, and things like that surrounding Andrew Wiggins, but a new report, an interesting one, has dropped surrounding this player, Wiggins, that makes things interesting as the Lakers continue to peruse the trade market. And obviously, the Lakers, most of their heavy lifting has been done. We obviously have heard reports that, Rob Pelinka is still involved in trade talks, but obviously you're going to wait for the right move. And a brand new article has dropped, and it reveals from each team the most realistic trade scenario. And for the Miami Heat, and we'll dive into a few different things here, but for Miami Heat, it is Andrew Wiggins. And the reporter goes on to say, without a doubt, the main man to watch for the Heat is Andrew Wiggins as it pertains to a trade. He was involved in a few trade talks over the summer, and given that Miami, again, looks like a middle-of-the-pack team, Wiggins' name will continue to be mentioned, and it'll be mentioned both into this, as the regular season starts, this offseason, and into the regular season as well, and potentially the trade deadline, which is something that is also interesting to note because, of course, as the trade deadline happens, obviously that's far away, could be an interesting name. But for the Lakers, this is a guy that desperately, the Lakers have wanted to acquire. We know that they tried to get him at multiple points throughout this year or past, this offseason rather. But I think he still makes a ton of sense. There's been some more rumblings and things like that happening, and I want to go over the Lakers part of this article and report. It says, despite all the buzz, LeBron James is likely to stay in LA for this season. He does, after all, have a no trade clause. So when it comes to trade candidates, things will stay the same for the Lakers, Austin Reaves, and Rui Hachimura. And of course, there's still Gabe Vincent, things like that. But as it pertains to the most valuable trade candidates, I guess, it is going to be Austin Reaves, and it is going to be Rui Hachimura. Now, regarding that, we'll dive into Reaves in another video. I think for now he's pretty safe. But Rui Hachimura, this makes a lot of sense because on one side of the spectrum here, you have Andrew Wiggins, who is most likely going to be the trade target that the Lakers continue to peruse, and players of that archetype fit what the Lakers are looking for. But we saw a new article drop here August 7th, so a couple weeks ago, and this just goes to show that for a while now, this article was technically 3 weeks ago. There was reports. This new article was from 2 or 3 days ago, but it's been happening all off season, and you can see this here. We know, and here's the mock trade, because I want to go over this for sake of a discussion, which is a little bit wild here. It's the Lakers receive Wiggins, the Heat receive Rui, Gabe, and 2 future first round picks. Now, the 2 future first round picks, I don't even know if the Lakers can technically trade 2 of their first round picks, but let's just say for argument's sake, it's Rui Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, the 2031 first, and then a 2032, whatever it is, a swap, right? So essentially 2 first round picks. It is a lot to give up for Andrew Wiggins, especially in a deal where you're giving up Rui Hachimura. And this is where I want to bring up the conversation again, because as we inch closer and closer to the season, obviously a lot of the talks now have been on Luka Doncic. We'll dive into a little bit as well. But the Lakers have a lot of work to do. And I think as their roster is currently constructed, I still believe they're one piece away for being a true championship contender. However, you can argue that if DeAndre Ayton has a great season, Marcus Smart has a great season, obviously LeBron and Luka have great seasons. I mean, they have the talent to be a championship contender. But a player like Andrew Wiggins makes so much sense for this Lakers team simply for the fact of he is an elite two-way player. Like, that's what he is. And he's something, I don't know if he's an elite two-way player, but he's a very good two-way player. And obviously at this point, right, like you're looking at it from the perspective of, why it makes sense for the Lakers. We know how good he can be. Now, you're giving up Rui Hachimura in this deal. I would much prefer Wiggins over Rui. Would I prefer Wiggins over Rui to the point of where you're giving up a first-round pick on top of Rui to get Wiggins? That's obviously the question mark, and it's a very interesting discussion because most likely, Rob Pelinka is probably done from now to the start of the regular season. That's obviously the most likely scenario. But following what has been a crazy past year or so for the Lakers, I don't rule anything out surrounding Rob Pelinka. And he said he was going to change his team up a lot. You still have expiring contracts and Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleber, Rui Hachimura, who is not an expire, or he isn't expiring, but he's actually a useful player. And obviously, if you're the Heat in this deal, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring up this trade in particular, like two future, really one future and a swap is a hefty price to give up. And if you're the Heat and you get offered that, like, that's not a bad package. You get Rui Hachimura, who can help the Heat still continue to compete. You get a decent, stack of draft capital. And I mean, if you're the Lakers, I guess you're more in, win now mode. You look at the stats from last year. Yeah, 17 games, 19 points. And you look at what the Heat gave up, of course, to get Andrew Wiggins and, what was given up, Jimmy Butler and all these things, part of the Jimmy Butler trade. It would, if you can flip Wiggins then into some more capital, it makes that trade look a little bit better, especially because, he looked pretty good with the Warriors, Jimmy Butler, but also ultimately didn't win them anything. like Wiggins is a great player, right? Defensively, really stout. Offensively, does more than, Rui Hachimura does. Is he a better shooter than Rui? No, but he does everything else better, right? He's a 3-level scorer. He can create his own shot. He can drive. He can do all these different things. But most importantly, you know, obviously for the Lakers, it makes a lot of sense because you look at their starting lineup: Luka, Reaves, Rui, LeBron, Ayton. Whether or not you want to start Rui, put him on the bench, put Marcus Smart instead of Rui, then it's Luka, Reaves, Smart, LeBron, Ayton. Like whatever way you want to cut the piece of the pie, like whatever it ends up being, right? That is going to, be fluid. You get Andrew Wiggins in there, he immediately starts. You have Luka, Reaves, Wiggins, LeBron, and Ayton. I think in a starting lineup like that, you could probably afford to actually keep Smart on the bench and help man that bench unit because the defense from Andrew Wiggins is that much better than Rui Hachimura. I'm not saying Rui is a horrible defender, but Wiggins is a very solid defender. And as of now, that starting five, I think, has too much defensive liability as it currently stands. And that's why you obviously, might put, and I've been saying on record, put maybe Marcus Smart in instead of Austin Reaves. Have Austin Reaves do what he's done before, which kind of be that 6-man role and man the bench unit. There's a lot of different ways that they can go about it here. But most importantly, of course, acquiring the player is the most interesting thing. So let me know down below what your thoughts are. Do you want to see them acquire him? Would you do it for a package like this? Obviously, a trade at this point isn't super, likely, but it's still a good conversation point because this is going to be something that obviously matters a lot to the Los Angeles Lakers over the next few weeks and even into the regular season as they continue to look for upgrades. And you'd also be shedding Gabe Vincent here. You can make an argument where you put Maxi Kleber in and add somebody else to get off of those guys. But for the Heat, you need to get somebody back who's decent, and Rui Hachimura would help that. They can still remain competitive with Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, all of those guys over there, Clell Ware, but you're not completely tanking and you're kind of just retooling. And then, of course, you can maybe, if you're the Heat and you start falling out of it, flip Rui Hachimura once again for, depending, maybe a first-round pick, probably multiple seconds. But let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. A couple other things I want to go over here before we wrap up is, of course, Luka Doncic. Now, we saw him a couple days ago in his first Eurobasket game, 28 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds in 28 minutes. I want to go over a couple different things. Now, some clips have surfaced as of late about Luka in this game and even in, his just more recent games in general. He has looked a lot faster out there on the court. Now, Keshi covered it in yesterday's video a little bit. He looks so much, faster, more agile, more confident. I am thinking that, and again, I've been on record saying that they need another player to make a, competitive championship roster. If he has a huge step forward, even agility-wise and defensively, Luka's never going to be a great defender, right? It's never going to happen. But if he can be a capable defender, that makes this starting lineup that much better. And we're already seeing it, albeit it's in Eurobasket, but we're already seeing it to where he looks so much better. He looks healthy. He's getting through it. And obviously, this was his first game back since his knee injury, and it's been a little game since. But I'm excited to see what happens with this team. And ultimately, trade talks are going to continue to swirl until the season starts. But hopefully, the offseason brings us one more move. I think they're one more move away from being a true championship contender. But at the end of the day, if this team plays to the way that we know they can play, hitting their ceiling, being the beast that they are, they can win the NBA Finals. But I'll wrap it up. Let me know down below your thoughts are. Cheers.